and rehab engineer. Oh, they just told me that recording's in progress. But also an important part of this, it's also part of the Advanced Design and Prototyping Technologies Institute. And the reason why I joined those two together, because ADAPT is our large institute which allows design and 3D printing and fabrication of different health and medical devices, as well as other areas. And so a lot of the work that I'll present actually is this uniting of the capabilities in G-Core and ADAPT. Now, this talk that I'm giving is also a subset of a special issue in the Journal of Applied Biomechanics, which was actually just released today. And this was instigated by the International Society of Biomechanics. And it's on the 50 years of musculoskeletal biomechanics, but it really is about the history and future of neuromusculoskeletal biomechanics, which is the topic of today's presentation. But you can also see there's a range of different reviews and original research that we collated in this special issue. And all these are free and open access. So for anyone who wants to read, there they are. And so all good. We deal with medical conditions, and probably a lot of you guys deal with different health and medical conditions. And we focus on neurological conditions, orthopedic and musculoskeletal, and cardiac and vascular. So they're the focus of what our research does. Well, and these are what we deal in: health and medical devices. And we deal with bionics, intelligent training systems, and personalized surgeries and implants. And so you'll see a lot of the work that I present today fits into those three categories. G-Core and ADAPT's capabilities stem from or span from advanced imaging methods. So you can see here. Oh, I just got a phone call. I need to turn that off too, don't I? Advanced imaging, big data and AI, digital twinning, which is probably where we call what we call neuromusculoskeletal modeling, but we also branch into computational fluid dynamics. But it's digital twinning in Industry 4 and Industry 5.0 terminology. We do advanced design, which leading to 3D printing. And then we have advanced biophysical testing. So we've got a 6DoF robot, and this is a simulator of blood flow of humans. And so we have all these different capabilities in G-Core and ADAPT. Now, the reason for launching into personalized neuromusculoskeletal models is because of the advent of, particularly one thing is in 3D printing of personalized devices. And these are just 3 printers from a raft of different printers that we have available to us at Griffith. But it's all about how do we design and manufacture these personalized devices, because they're actually able to do that now. And so the TGA has come up with a redefinition of what it means by custom-made devices, which used to encompass personalized medical devices. But now they've broken, as of 25th of February 2021, it went from custom-made to an adaptable medical devices to custom-made but patient-matched medical devices, which have to be listed on ART-G. And then there's devices produced using a medical device and production system, MDPS. Now, these are in these white papers or documents produced by the TGA. The real problem is that MDPS system is not defined. And so what we're proposing really in personalized neuromusculoskeletal modeling is that this is what the medical device production system is based upon. So this is not missed the FDA in the USA's attention as well. It actually probably predates that of the TGA. And they've actually, in 2017, included computer modeling and simulation as the fourth arm of product development and regulatory approval through the FDA pathways. And they provided this pathway, which is they call the total product life cycle, which looks suspiciously like Industry 4 or Industry 5 design cycles. And part of this has this virtual prototyping, design optimization, and design ideation cycle. And that's really, we use that to go into preclinical testing and then clinical testing. And so you've got this cycle within cycles before you actually release a product. And so this is the area that I think neuromusculoskeletal biomechanics has a major role. And the ASME has even in 2018 come out with a standard of sorts of verification and validation of computational modeling and simulation applied to medical devices. The important thing about this is that it actually takes it from a multi-scale neuromusculoskeletal mechanisms perspective. So it's a multi-physics and physiology. And what we mean by multi-physics is biomechanical, biofluids, biochemical, bioelectromagnetics, and biothermal. So these are all physics or biophysics-based models of the mechanisms. Now, this concept of using mechanistic-based modeling is not new to other industries. And the industry that I refer to, because I actually came out of the aeronautical industry, is that the aeronautical industry and their design now actually is heavily based on digital twins, from molecular micromechanics simulations through to coupons, which is basically larger structural components or elements. Then these are actually compiled into what they call intermediate simulations of compiled systems or subsystems, and then panel testing, again in silico panel testing of a lot of these structural components combined together. And then they actually conclude with full-scale mechanical testing. That's physical testing. So a lot of the work is actually done digitally, and until you actually get to the final prototype. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but we can lean upon the aeronautical industry and other industries which have adopted in silico methods for design and development and refinement of new products. So let's go into the problem of neuromusculoskeletal conditions. Now, it is a multi-scale problem. And currently, well, yeah, I suppose currently we've got three realms. We've got this cellular and subcellular realm of studies, which is molecular and cellular biology and biochemistry. You've got all the omics under the sun, and you've got a whole range of animal models as well. Then you go to human-based models, where you've got human neurophysiology, pain pathways, biomechanics, and human physiology that you can do. And then you've got large-scale population-based studies, which are the realm of epidemiology, prospective cohorts, randomized controlled trials. Now, we assume there's this dirty great big black box which connects these three different realms together. And these links are fairly shaky because we don't know the mechanisms which connect these different size and time scales. Now, our go-to has been biostatistics and bioinformatics in the health and medical world. Now, and we'll get into that a little bit, but that is focused on populations of people, not individuals. And that's a really important distinction. And statistics model population variation, not mechanisms of how things work. This is in another realm. So we've got computational medicine and simulation, that computational modeling and simulation. But now enter stage left. We've got machine and deep learning and big data. Now, so we've got three different types of modeling or forms of modeling that we can bring to bear onto this problem. So let's look briefly at each one of these different things. So first of all, computational modeling and simulation, as we said, is multi-physics, biophysics models. Right? Now, biostatistics and bioinformation models population variation. So this is a bimodal distribution, which is showing the differences between two different populations of data. In the end, a lot of statistical work is done on generalized linear models. And here's some different population-based data modeled by generalized linear models. Now, the question I ask all the time with this is a population of people, not a person. So where is your individual in this population of data? It depends how you separate the populations to look at some of these relationships. And who said those ways of separating populations of people actually represents an individual? And that's a really important thing to bring to bear to this question. Then we have big data, and it's much better. It's biostatistics and bioinformatics on steroids, but it's still got an underlying neural network or deep learning neural network underpinning it. There is no mechanism there. It fits input data to output data and looking at the relationships or the patterns between those. The patterns that it finds in tuning a model may not actually represent the real world. It just represents the patterns in the data that's presented to it. So how can we ensure that the modeling that we apply actually represents an individual in the real world and real world mechanisms? Okay, and this is where we propose, or I propose, and a lot of other people have been saying that biophysical mechanisms, both conceptual and mathematical, broken up into these 5 different multi-physics elements, are the way in which we can do real-world simulations and to do design and development of biomedical or medical and rehabilitation devices. So how do we break this up? So in a recent article in Journal of Science and Medicine and Sport we presented earlier this year, we broke this up into a number of loops. And they're loops and that's really important for me, because a loop is a dynamical equation. In other words, it constitutes partial differential equations, which is central to everything that we model in physics. So at the lowest level, we have mechanobiological loops that we're trying to influence. A tissue structure goes under tissue strain, which triggers a biological cascade, which changes the tissue structure, and this keeps going on. Now, this mechanobiology loop is also influenced by biomechanics and biochemistry. And sorry, I haven't got loops for biochemistry. I'm a biomechanist, so I'll treat all this here. But these is muscle contraction affecting segmental and joint loading and motion, which obviously applies itself to the tissue structures. Again, this is a cyclic set of systems. And then you have neural control, and neural control is broken up into different levels. You have this cycle here, or loop, which is sensory motor spinal control. So it's all in the spinal cord. And then you have supraspinal subcortical loops, which basically go to the cerebellum and thalamus, and they control the sensory motor spinal loops. These are called central pattern generators in the neural world, and these are under control of the different sensory systems that we have on our body. both peripheral and other ones located in the head. Then we start to head up into cortical level. Oh, sorry, and these are all influenced by sensory apparatus that are distributed across the body. Then you have this perception action subcortical and cortical loops, and it's very difficult to separate these, but basically you get a motor intention which provides a motor executive command that controls this cascade of neural systems down the subcortical and the spinal cord, and this is affected or by the sensory perception that we actually perceive. And now I put this as yellow boxes because green down tends to be much more mechanistic. And then we launch into something yellow, which tends to be something more behavioral or even psychologically based. And so you get into these cortical cognitive loops, which obviously affects these more mechanistic things, but you've got things like conscious decision, experience and training, memory, your thoughts and values, free will, all impose itself on controlling this multi-scale set of loops. And these are just gross loops. There's lots of different other loops within loops there. So that's the way I try to think about these things from a neuromusculoskeletal perspective. So let's look at the types of modeling and how to break it down. And this is basically focusing on surgical implant design or surgery design. So what we have are finite element models of bones and implants and joints. And these, you have neuromusculoskeletal rigid body models. So you've got finite element and rigid body models. Now, this goes into a loop where you go into in silico surgery and implant design. So you can go do the design, generate the meshes, apply finite models, evaluate it, and go in this loop. These are the other things which impact upon the finite element models. You've got the actual surgical installation, you've got physiological boundary conditions, and you've got material properties of the bones and the implants. And so this is, from mechanical testing, constitutive modeling, and parameter identification through inverse FEA modeling. Now, the physical boundary conditions are actually provided by the neuromusculoskeletal rigid body models. And so the FEA models and the rigid body models need to be consistent and personalized to allow us to venture into this loop to develop and design and prototype in silico these surgeries and the implants. And then after you've evaluated it and said, that's great, you can then go into the 3D printing and the manufacturing of anatomical models, surgical instrumentation, and implants. So what is this neuromusculoskeletal modeling framework look like? So I call this the digital human platform. And the data that feeds it is from literature, musculoskeletal imaging, the laboratory. Now we're including 3D body scans from the movie industry. You've got wearable sensors. You've got cameras that can be used in the real world, like iPhones and depth cameras. And you've even got LiDAR scans of digital environments in which we live. Now, these inform physics-based models from anatomical models, functional and anatomical models, the rigid body neuromusculoskeletal muscle, tissue finite element models, but you'll see that we're actually adding animation and VFX models and digital environments. And all this data flows to and from big data for physics-informed AI. I'm not saying that we don't use AI. I'm saying that we need to use AI in the right way to allow these things to be created and operated. So this model generation and operation process is actually what I have broken it down to a 7-step process, which goes from digitization of data, data curation, the creation of the model, the tuning of those models so they actually generate physically and physiologically plausible results. Then you can calibrate these models to the individual to match their individual's measured data. Then you have to validate it. If the model's not validated and it's not predicting parameters that are and output variables, then don't trust your model. And then once you've gone through this validation process, you can go into the operation and execution process, because you now have a personalized, validated model. So, and just to show you how we break this down, I've broken it down into 11 different modules for generation and 11 different modules for operation. And this is just for reference purposes, but you can see it spans a lot of different things. And it also includes animation models as well. And you'll see why in a tick. So this is digging in a bit more detail. So we collect imaging data. This is in movie quality animation scans and LiDAR scans of the environment, MRIs, literature data, and motion capture data from a lab. This data travels to and from the cloud, where you do digitization, curation of the data to ensure that it is quality. Once you've got that, you've now got 3 layers of modeling. You've got rigid body models, finite element models, and animation models of the person and of the metaverse or their environment. So these are done in different modeling software. Rigid body is done in OpenSim and Cinemas, which can be both customized to personalized models. FEA is FE Bio and Abacus and other FE modeling packages. And animation can be done in Maya, Blender, and Ziva. So these are different types of modeling environments that can be compiled together to create our complete personalized human digital twin. And this is some of our different things that we in operation. And these are the different joints and tissues that we focus on, mainly because we've been funded to do so through different funding avenues. Then this has to be taken to the real world, where you've got low fidelity imaging methods, wearables, and in-field data. So you can see some of these. You've got computer vision methods, you've got and pose estimation methods, you've got X-rays and ultrasound, you've got smart garments, and this is just an example of some of our smart garments that we've developed here. You've got augmented, and I'm going to kill the sound on that. You've got different augmented and extended reality devices, from smart glasses and virtual reality glasses and systems. You've got auditory feedback, you've got haptic feedback, and all these things get brought together for an augmented or extended reality immersive environment. And these are just here. These are what digital environments that we've actually created using animations. And you'll see that they've got a virtual person who is looking at this environment from a first-person view. So you can see this person looking at first person themselves. Same here. This top scan is actually of the Esplanade at Surfers Paradise. So you can actually put in real digital environments as well as animated creations that you can immerse the person in training or anything else for that matter. So this was our digital athlete, which is really the first one of merging all these digital layered environments together. So what you see here is Madison Rochi, who is a digital athlete, Canberra Capitals basketball player and Opals. You can see the neuromusculoskeletal modeling in the background, driving this animation of Maddie shooting a goal. At the same time, you can see we're peering inside the person's body to look at, for example, here, ACL strain and Achilles tendon strain. So that was the idea, is for the digital athlete is, can you look at the outside, but also peer on the inside of the functioning neuromusculoskeletal system? The other digital athlete is Dinesh Palapana. And Dinesh is a quadriplegic, wheelchair bound. But this is his animation. Oh, don't know what. You can see looking first person and third person. So first person is when you look at yourself and the environment from your eyes, and third person is what you're seeing is when we look at a person walking and doing different activities in the environment. So that's the idea, is to be able to switch between first person and third person views. And this is easily done in animation environments. And the real-time environment that we use is Unity, which is another standard piece of software used in an engine used in the animation world. And so a really important thing behind all this was able to do real-time training and doing real-time neuromusculoskeletal modeling and FEA modeling. And this is just some of the examples that we've created. They're a bit old now. They're probably about 3 or 4 years old. This is articular loading inside the knee joint in real time. And this is stress strain on an iPhone of the Achilles tendon, which is enabled by machine learning and AI methods. So a really important part of all these different models is them to be valid and benchmark models. And I'm going to go drive this in a bit of detail, because I think it's important for how we do neuromusculoskeletal modeling. First of all, this is some of the criteria that we use to check if a model is working good or not. And this is the knee lateral condyle loading in walking. So this is measured lateral compartment loading in the knee joint. This was a while ago estimated lump muscle models, where you can put them all together to solve the redundancy problem. That's the neuromuscular redundancy problem that's inherent in all biomechanics that we do. What you see is zero loading during the stance phase predicted. Here's the measured. Dynamic optimization methods. Again, you get low and some zero loading in stance. Same thing with static optimization from recent work as well out of Europe. Now, this is not valid data. So what we did back in the early mid-2000s was to use EMG-driven modeling, which is obviously one of the modeling methods that I've championed through my career. And this, without it doing anything special to our modeling, we're able to predict this data that's actually measured. Now, it's not the same person, but it's predicting literature-based data. So it allows us to get more confidence in the modeling framework that we're using. Then we were part of the grand challenge. Can we actually predict measured knee contact forces in people who've got instrumented knee implants? So we had 5 people from the USA, and this was their instrumented implant. They got medial and lateral joint contact forces. We measured everything on them possible that we're able to generate neuromusculoskeletal computational models in OpenSim and Cinemas. The green is the measured forces. And what we did is looked at a scale generic model using in OpenSim and Cinemas versus a personalized model. So watch here, you'll see this model change from a scale generic, which is typical of what you use in OpenSim, to something which we created from the drawings and the CTs of these people. And you can see, obviously, it's making a huge difference in accuracy of prediction of the medial joint contact forces. The other thing to make a point is that you can tune these models with inappropriate musculus tendon parameters of the muscle tendon unit. And you can get bad predictions if you don't select your muscular tendon parameters of the physiological models correctly. So this is poor muscle tendon parameters. This is good muscle tendon parameters. So this is even with a personalized musculoskeletal model, you can have bad predictions if you use poor muscular tendon parameters. Bad, good. Again, making the point that you need to be doing that correctly. Now, this is another argument for using EMG-informed modeling. Now, this person, while walking, was able to, on demand, co-contract the muscles around the knee joint and change between non-co-contraction and co-contraction. And then we looked, that was on demand, and we saw in real time how they changed their, this is the medial compartment loading. So walking along with no co-contraction. And then you can see here, they start co-contracting. You can see this large jump in the medial compartment loading, which is reflected here. This one, there was a couple of different loading conditions, but this one here in red is the co-contraction, here's in blue. Now, this is really important. All the other things, the biomechanical variables that happened at the same time. So the lateral joint contact force increased, the knee flexion angle decreased, the knee adduction moment decreased, the knee flexion extension moment increased, but the external load contribution to the medial compartment loading decreased. It was the muscular load contribution that increased this lateral compartment loading. So in other words, you need to model how people are activating their muscles, and it's going to change. And we know things change depend upon pathology, training, or just the actual control tasks that the person's doing, even when the biomechanics are exactly the same. And the important point here is if static optimization was used, the knee flexion extension moment decreased. So that would drive the knee joint contact forces down. And it also reduced the knee adduction moment. So all these other external biomechanical measures would have driven the internal solutions down, not up to what it should have been. But co-contraction doesn't necessarily mean that you have higher joint contact forces. That's been a standard belief for quite some time. Our work and other people's work have shown that co-contraction doesn't necessarily lead to higher joint contact forces. And that's another really important thing, because it's also the other factors such as muscle volumes and strength do contribute to the joint contact forces. And this is, sorry, I'm going to drive this home, but this is other things that we've applied to other tissues. So this is using imaging to get at an ankle joint model and Achilles tendon model, coupled with motion capture, driven through cinemas and open sim to estimate Achilles tendon strain, or forces, I should say. And this is 3 different tasks: walking, counter movement jump, and running. The blue is the predicted from the current study, this one here, and the red and the gray are from instrumented Achilles tendon implants. And this is from Europe. That's Paavo Komi's group. And you can see how well these things match the measured forces applied to the Achilles tendon in these different tasks. So what this means is that personalization and this combination of open sim and cinemas is currently the best way to estimate joint loading, and we will say tissue loading in general. And this has been independently suggested by other people, not us, and that you need to add personalization to this whole scheme. And so that's what, so do we need it? There's been a couple of studies. Is it worth it? The short answer is yes, you do need to do it, I think. And that's what I'm proposing that we need to do. And we need to be concentrating on methods to make this thing work better. So this is it, neuromusculoskeletal modeling for health and medical devices. We finally got there, but it's broken up into rigid body and FEA modeling. And you can see some of the different models that we're combining now to do this work. And these are off the same imaging and motion capture data. And that's a really important thing to actually emphasize, but also to emphasize that it's neuromusculoskeletal. And skeletal, we mean bones and joints. So, and that's what's required. And personalization of these is really necessary. So, how do we do this? So we've been working with ourselves and other groups, Adelaide and University of Auckland, and our own group is to do morphing of bones. Here's some of the work that's informed some of this work, and I'm going to show you some results of some of our studies which have tried to reduce the amount of data necessary to morph bones, so we don't have to do full segmentation of MRIs or CTs. So this is specifically focused on children. So we had full images or partial images from MRIs. We also created sparse points identified off these images, so you don't have to do a full segmentation. And we said, can sparse points give you the same sort of accuracy as full imaging does? So we use principal component sailing, post mesh fitting, and I'm just getting my lunch delivered to me. And host mesh fitting and local mesh refinement, which is all available in the MAP client, which has come out of Auckland University. And this is the final meshes that you come up. So there's surface meshes of bones and solid meshes. And what we found is that full images versus sparse points is that you basically get the same results from sparse points as if you were using full images on the Jacquard index and Hausdorff distances. So you can reliably use these sparse points to do this morphing. So that's a good way of reducing the demands on creating personalized bones, at least. The next one has been on our automatic generation of personalized knee model mechanisms. Again, there's a suite of papers that you can refer to this, and it's rigid body models as well as elastic foundation models, as well as FEA models. So there's 3 different modeling types that can be generated from the same data. I'm going to present the rigid body modeling and the FEA modeling. To do so, you need benchmarks. So there's what you normally get is primary joint kinematics, which is knee flexion extension, and secondary kinematics, which is anterior posterior draw, superior inferior draw, medial lateral draw, internal external rotation, and abduction rotation. Now, this is data that can be collected on the individual, on cadavers, or other people. So what you have is motion capture can provide the primary joint kinematics with good accuracy. Secondary kinematics, not really. And this is where you have to either depend upon ex vivo models or in vivo imaging. So this is some of our own work using MRIs or fluoroscopy, and this is some other work which has been using bone pins in people's femur, tibia, and patella. And this is the type of data that you can use to tune models. So what we have is a rigid body model and finite element models in this presentation. They're off the same data. So what we do is we do auto segmentation of MRIs, and that's really hot off the press, and it's not even in press at the moment, but we've got auto segmentation going with the University of Queensland, and template-based joint tissue identification. So the segmentation and these different tissues are identified using template matching methods. And then these go in to create tibiofemoral, patellofemoral mechanisms, rigid body or finite models. And this is them actually functioning. And this is checking against the secondary kinematics that we're recording. So this is the MRI registered data and model estimates in the red. And so they're doing a good job. And the similar can be seen for the FEA models and their secondary kinematics. The difference here is there's a difference in coordinate systems, and we're still pushing this back to the standard, the same coordinate system, but still you see the same good results in predicting the secondary kinematics. Let's change gears and go into bionic devices. And this is our BioSpine program for neurorehabilitation of people who've had spinal cord injury. These are all the different technologies that are available to do rehabilitation and neuro recovery of people with spinal cord injury. You have robotic assistance, so these are exoskeletons and to drive the person in movement. These is functional electrical stimulation for rowing, walking, and cycling. And you can also see this cycling and this one here also have motorized assistance. So that's an interesting thing. It combines functional electrical stimulation of muscles and motorized assistance. You can also get now transcutaneous and epidural spinal cord stimulation to enable movement. You can also get neuroactive drugs that can come together to act with these different technologies. You can get augmented reality and extended reality and brain-computer interfaces. So we literally asked the question, can we combine all these different things into one system? And that was the idea behind BioSpine. And BioSpine, these are all the different subsystems that make up BioSpine. So you can see there's a motion database, a biosensor network, robotic motorized assistance, electrical stimulation, extended reality, animations and gamification, a brain-computer interface, and computer vision to bring them all together operating in the robot operating system. And this is BioSpine XR only. So the person is not moving. So here it is here, the person is on a bed, inclined bed. They have an EEG system, which they think about walking. A brain-computer interface classifies the user's intention, whether it's to walk or not walk. If the person thinks about walking, they will walk. So this is their animated model walking. That is then put in this animated and gamified environment. So you can see the person looking down, seeing their legs. They start walking and they can look down and see their legs walking and arms moving. And then they can peer around their metaverse environment while they're walking. So that's just a stationary XR-based training system that all our people start on to learn how to do this motor imagery, which is required to image the movements that you want to get the person to do. Then we've got the BioSpine TWH. TWH stands for the whole hog. Yeah, I came up with that. And so basically what is included is actually the electrical stimulation and robotically assisted or motorized assisted movements. So in this case, the person is sitting in a motorized leg assistment cycling system, which we just bought off the shelf. We have a functional electrical stimulation system. Again, we've got a set of biosensors on the person. This EEG system goes through a brain-computer interface, which identifies if the person is motor imagery is actually classified to do cycling or do resting. If it's cycling, we turn this human machine interface on, which has the person together with the cycle. This controls the motorized assistance and the electrical stimulation. At the same time, this is coordinated and consistent with the animated gamification of a person riding the cycle. You'll see it rewind in a tick. You can see they look down at their legs, walk, moving the cycle. and then they can peer around their environment through this animated environment, which they get back through a VR glasses, 3R VR, auditory feedback and haptic feedback as well. So that's the complete system. We finished a year trial on this, and we got some really quite outstanding outcomes from this training method. This has moved on now. So BioSpine has morphed into the digital cyclist. And this is where we are right now. So this is a digital person scanned in. And this is one of our first digital cyclists. And this is the digital cyclist. So this is individual muscle powers of the person cycling. This is the neuromusculoskeletal modeling underneath. And this is the animated model of the person cycling on a bike. So, and that's basically what the digital cyclist is. So we're moving from a spinal cord injured patient to able-bodied cycling and elite cycling. And what we're trying to do is continue that complete spectrum from the paracyclist or the spinal or brain injured person to the able-bodied cyclist. That's our current effort. Now, just going back to, again, a use of this thing in training. Now, this is really important. So this is just to refresh you that we've got neuromusculoskeletal models that predict Achilles tendon forces well. So we can use that as training for AI-based models. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we've got smartphone cameras or depth cameras. So we've got both. And this is a person walking on a track. And you can, and this is the database of, mocap data that we've got in the can already. And so we've got all the tendon forces, Achilles tendon forces for these people. So now what you can do, you can synthesize human pose data and from the motion capture data. And then you've also got a database of neuromusculoskeletal tendon strains and tendon forces that you can train this LSTM AI model on. Then using leave one out cross-validation, then we can see how well we're predicting the actual model, the biophysics or biomechanical neuromusculoskeletal model, tendon strains and tendon forces. And this is it. So this is for running, and this is examples of people's data. The AI model is in green, the neuromusculoskeletal model is in red. And this has just been published in IEEE Transactions of Neuro Rehabilitation and Sensor Robotic, whatever that one stands for. And this is stuff that is now going to publication. It's being prepared for publication now. And so this is Achilles tendon forces in different tasks. So this is running, walking, counter movement, jumping, landing, and heel rise. So this is from the synthesized data. So we can predict across different tasks. And this is predictions of in the real world using people. So this is the underlying data from the neuromusculoskeletal models of another set of data. And this is the predictions in the world from cameras. So now let's get into surgeries and implants. So the idea of what we're doing is trying to get some cellular lattice, 3D printed cellular lattice structures for implants and bone plates from solid, because these things allow better ingrowth and better matching of the bones, Young's modulus. So you get you don't get stress shielding effects. So, but the question is, how do you design that? So we're basing, one of our team is Stephanie Fye, and she's come from the aerospace industry and worked for Boeing. And this is models of different cellular lattice structures. And a lot of her work is actually comparing the actual compression of 3D printed cellular lattice structures and the FEA simulations of those. And essentially what it's showing is that your FEA simulations can actually predict the same things that you are measuring. Again, getting back to validated models that we can have confidence in. So using this as a basis, we're now going through this pathway of different 3D printed cellular lattices, 3D printing them and doing the mechanical testing on them, but now doing the design of these implants and doing FEA modeling on that as well. Now, this has been now put into practice, not specifically lattice structures, but implants off the shelf, or these are bone implants or fixation plates. And this is for kids with different types of lower limb deformities. So we've now created this modeling stream where you can combine neuromusculoskeletal modeling with meshing off the Hounsfield units, off the CT scan. So you can see this here. And then we use the boundary conditions from the neuromusculoskeletal modeling using inertial relief as well as the muscle tendon contact forces to apply to native femurs and femurs which have actually had the surgery carried out with the implant doing that fixation. So that's the modeling scheme. And now this is what has been put into practice. You've probably seen Martina Barzan present some of this stuff. So this is virtual surgical planning and the workflow that we use. So we take MRIs and CTs and motion capture from the clinical gait analysis laboratory. We create digital twins of those. This is the deformed femur, and this is the intact native femur of the left limb. You can see it's more normal. We reflect that, and then we do in silico planning to do the multiple cut planes that are necessary to get these the corrected femur in the same alignment and positions as the target femur. We then select fixation plates and bone screws to do this fixation. Then we do computer simulation of range of motion to see if it does increase range of motion. And we then look at the computer simulations of muscle lines of action to see if they are moved back to normal, healthy ranges. Now, we're also now putting this in gait simulations with FEA stress models, and this is now underway. It's not in clinical service. The clinical service that we are doing is actually just these functional simulations, and this goes into this design loop until we get the best surgical correction and the best selection of fixation, best fixation plate. Then once we're happy with that, the computer designed surgical cutting and drilling guides are designed. And then these are 3D printed on our printer, both the anatomical models for practicing and also the real surgical guides that the surgeon puts in practice. This is the actual surgery. And so this has been in practice for nearly 3 years now. And it's a commercial service that G-Core and ADAPT provide. We've done 32 to date. We've done this across 7 different, this from the SILE and into trial and now into service. 7 different surgeons. We're now expanding our sites from the hip down to distal femur, distal tibia and proximal tibia, and different types of implants. And so this is the type of work that's now into practice based upon personalized neuromusculoskeletal modeling.
David, I might
now I'm in the home stretch.
I might need to finish up, David.
And this is another type of actually designing implants. And this is to fix a ruptured scapholunate interosseous limit. This is not the final one. This is what we can show you. It's 3D printed in PCL. We actually create a model of each one of these fibers. Then we can do an FEA analysis of that fiber. And then we've done simulation experiments to see simulation versus actual experimental and see how well we predict the experimental data. And then we put that into a design scenario where you can put movement from medical imaging using machine or deep learning to come up with statistical shape models of the bones and their movement. You insert a virtual implant, which is a bone ligament bone implant. You can do an FEA model. This is looking at different design characteristics of the FEA model and see which one actually works best. It's installation site and also the length of the actual ligament part of the bone ligament bone implant. And you can see with different types of bone, ligament components on distal, intermediate, or proximal, you can see that this is the PCL ultimate tensile strength. So you can see which position and which length ligament best keeps the strain below that PCL ultimate tensile strength. So you can use this as a design way to do design. And that's exactly what we've done. That's the complete pathway. And we've done this, we've printed it and done in cadaveric installation and robotic testing. We're now ready to get into first in human trials. That's it, the end. So I hope I made the case that you'd need to do personalized neuromusculoskeletal models, how it's done, and how it can be applied in different health and medical devices. And I really have to say, this is a dirty, great big team of people over a huge number of years, which have allowed all this stuff to work. And these are the people who really do the work. I'm just the boss. So thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, David. Anybody looking
you
for
muted, Dave.
That's really such a wonderful summary of from the basic science through to the full research translation in neuromusculoskeletal modeling, covering so many facets of the human anatomy, physiology, and applications. With real world clinical outcomes. So yeah, really terrific. Thank you, David. We've just gone a little bit over time, so I suppose in the spirit of the MyBridge lecture, we won't have questions. I do want to thank you, David, for that that presentation on behalf of the ARC Centre for Medical Implant Technologies. I want to thank you for coming on and for our online participants as well. And for questions that you might have, I'll encourage you to reach out to David. And David will be at the ANZORS meeting in Auckland in December. So that'll be a great opportunity to catch up with him more on this topic. So thank you again, everybody. And we're going to close the session.
Thank you.
Appreciate your attendance.
Thanks.